Episode 2!
We're back! And we forgot to change our clothes from last week. If you're watching this on YouTube.
I don't know what you're speaking about because I chose to wear the same outfit on the day of the recording.
And nothing's changed in our background either.
I moved the water cup that's right between our heads just a little to the left.
So we are obviously taking advantage of our kids not being here. And we will be bulk recording this series this week. So many of the episodes will be exactly how the last one was.
All right, episode 2, which is what we're diving into, June 2024, last episode to recap. We talked about the 2 years almost that it's been, well, it will be, that we haven't recorded a podcast. Our season 1 that we recorded, last episode was May 5th of 2023. So we talked about the 2 years in between. And now we're talking about June 2024, our flights, the leap, our reality versus the expectation, what we had communicated to many people, the vision, London. I see London, I see France.
I see Alex's underpants.
I see Giselle's underpants.
Did you leave the bedroom door open?
No, I didn't.
Because it's getting warm in here. All right. It's about to rain.
It's getting warm because of the energy that's moving between us, right?
All right, anyway. So back to what we were going to talk about, flying from New York to London. So how did our process go? What was our process with our travels? We're going to tell you the secrets right now. The process is that we didn't really have a process. No, that's a lie. You always have a process, but our process was not organized or neat. Our process was go on Skyscanner, which is what we have been using.
Well, that wasn't our initial process. Our initial process is we did want to travel to specific locations at specific times, then realized that financially,
some of the countries that we were considering to go to first, financially were just unaffordable for the budget that we were living off of. Like, for instance, we wanted to go to Ireland. We wanted to go to Iceland. We looked those countries up. Holy snap. Those are very expensive countries. So we were like, okay, we're going back to the drawing board. So we went back to the drawing board, and what we came up with was the best thing to do is, since we have extreme flexibility and there's really like no place that we're like, we have to go here. We wanted to go everywhere. We said, let's just put in where we are and let's explore everywhere. And on skyscanner.com, that feature is something that you can do. And then we would just put in the month that we wanted to fly. So obviously being in New York in June, we put in everywhere. And what we realized is that big cities like London were the cheapest places to fly into. And I was like, okay, perfect. Because then that being a big city too and a hub opens you up to the rest of Europe and other countries. So that was what we decided. So we got a flight from JFK to London. We also liked that it was like one flight. You didn't have to switch airplanes. I think it was like 8.5 hours. It was like 8 hours.
It was actually faster.
Faster? Okay.
It was 6 hours. It was initially supposed to be 7.5. But the flight was delayed.
Are you sure?
Yes. Our flight was supposed to be at 2 o'clock in the morning. We liked it we liked that flight because it was an overnight flight. The kids were going to be able to sleep on it.
We're like, they're going to be tired, so they're just going to sleep.
And the flight didn't leave until like 3:30, but they had planned for that.
You remember way more. I remember
a lot because number one is
I just know that we got on the airplane.
Airplane travel for me, I remember these things because it's not my most favorite thing to do, but I've enjoyed it. I've learned to enjoy it. I want to talk about.
He has a fear of flying, and
I don't have a fear. I don't have a fear. Much more of a debilitating fear anymore of flying. Before it was bad. Yeah. Now I know how to navigate through it in a way that I can be functional.
I mean, in a way that you traveled for 8 months on airplanes.
Yes, on airplanes. I don't want to lose a point here. June 2024, the flight to New York, right? Like the leap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like we're talking about overseas, which was beautiful, but there were some things that happened in June 2024, flying to New York. We learned that our daughter Lenavelle did not like airplanes.
She had no issue getting here, And granted, we were here a whole year, so she didn't go on an airplane for a whole year. And coming here was her first time on an airplane as well. She had never been, she was like the only, well, not the only, her and the girls. So basically, both of the girls were born in Virginia, in the United States, and we never left the country, although we traveled all over the country, but it was in an RV. So they had never been on an airplane. So this was the first time, and we both were like, "Oh, this is interesting."
And the flight here to DR, she was excited.
She was fine.
It was only a 2-hour flight.
It was a 2.5-hour flight. Like, she was great. She was fine. It was from Florida to Dominican Republic. She did great. All of a sudden, we get on an airplane, leaving Dominican Republic, and this girl just starts freaking out on us. Like, I'm talking about, she looks like a wild animal trying to claw her way out of the airplane, and she's like freaking out,
like screaming.
And we were on the very, very last row because no other were like available. But I always choose the back of the airplane because I was like, oh, you know, the bathrooms are right there. We have 4 kids. I was like, I don't want to have to get up 20 million times to go to the bathroom. So easy access.
We also didn't choose. We decided now how companies make even more money is they charge you for seats.
Yeah, those I chose them.
Oh, okay.
I chose those seats.
All right, well,
I remember.
We never chose our seats
Afterwards.
Yeah. If they cost us extra money, we just like left it to the
airlines to decide.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we get on the airplane and she just starts freaking out. She's like, I don't want to be on the airplane. I don't want to go up in the sky. The airplane is going to fall. And we have no idea where this came from because although Alex has a fear of flying, it isn't something that we were just like talking about all the time. And I want to say around that time, like we didn't even mention his fear anymore. Like we know it's something he has, you know, he knows how to deal with it. Anyway, so she's going through this whole process. I'm sitting on the other row. So it's Alex with her. I don't remember what other kids were sitting next to you. And then I'm on the other row.
It was Caden.
Okay, so
initially.
It was him, Caden, and Linabelle, and then I'm on the other row with Lumi, Grayson, and Liam. So there's this other family behind us, and they also have like 4 kids. And eventually, the mom was so kind. I don't know how we came to the realization. Maybe you speak.
Well, there wasn't so the last row there wasn't a window.
Yeah.
And Linabelle she was like, I need a window.
Okay,
I need a window.
She was verbalizing that she needed a window.
Yeah, and
I was trying to figure out how the woman got on to her needing the window.
Yeah, and so she overheard. She had 4 older children. They had 4 older children.
They had one who was like 5 or 6. Yeah. The other 3 girls were like preteens and teens.
Yeah, and so she looked at me and she said, you know, we don't mind. We can switch the whole row. My 3 can take your 3 seats, and it's no problem. And so I said, please, I really appreciate it. And we sat down, and Linabelle got in the seat, and well, I had to sit in the seat with her after takeoff. I had to do some navigating because obviously the flight attendants were like, she needs to be in a seat.
With her seatbelt on, and Linabelle just wanted to be like clung onto his body. Yeah. And we're like, we're trying really hard to get a child to sit in her seat with her seatbelt on.
So this whole process, we're in the air, we're taking off. We're like, she was still screaming and uncomfortable as the plane was taking off. So we switched rows middle of the flight, not middle of the flight, but as we were about to take off and into takeoff. And so that made my mind occupied. Like I'm dealing with this, and usually I'm at a point where I need to just be in a seat. I have to focus on my breath. I need to work through my own processes.
And I couldn't do anything because I have the baby.
Yeah.
And I had Lumi, and I was like, I'm sorry. Like, if I give you the baby, he's going to be screaming and crying. So I was like, you got to figure this out because I can't go over there and do it for you.
And it was a bumpy takeoff. There was turbulence for the first 20 to 30 minutes.
Alex's enemy.
There was a bunch of turbulence, and it didn't help Linabelle. And for me, I wasn't so stuck on it because I was trying to focus on calming Linabelle down. And that was a blessing in disguise because I don't like turbulence. Now I know it's common, and it could be something small that can
just, and the airplane's not going to fall.
Yeah, but for my own processes, it's been something that I've had to overcome. So when Linabelle was going through this, being able to be there for her, being able to be present and talk her through what's going on, I didn't think about the flight at all on the takeoff. And then for the last part of the flight, it was very smooth, but we were able to get her calmed down. I was able to get her calmed down. I was able to talk to her. She fell asleep. And when she woke up, we had gotten through all the clouds because around the island it was pretty cloudy, and we were working through the clouds for a fairly good time. And when she was able to see the ocean and see the clouds scattered through the sky and the sun glistening, she was excited and like, oh man, she was mesmerized. So she enjoyed that aspect, and she enjoys the cruising aspect. She likes to now when we fly,
we just didn't think about it, like having a conversation of what it was going to be like to fly, because we didn't expect that reaction. Obviously, once the reaction happened, I was like, oh, now this is something like we have to discuss.
And it's our life.
And then
we both were asking each other, like, did we just make a mistake?
We're like, did we just make the biggest mistake of our life to now go traveling full time while our child has this debilitating fear of flying? I was like, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to handle this? So I had to, I was like, we have to work on this. Like, I had to figure out how to take this wall down of this fear of flying that just developed out of nowhere. Like, we had no idea she had it. We had no idea that this was going to be a thing. So when we get to New York, when we land, I made a point to spend the next few days talking to her about flying, talking to her about the safety of airplanes and all the things, and how there's a pilot in the front and he's controlling everything, and trying to convince her into the safety of flying. But then I also left for 5 days. So come back and we're having to like buy clothes for the kids, all the things that they need for the travels, like for us, because we were living out here very much on island wardrobe. Like, I think we had more bathing suits than anything else. The kids didn't even have shoes. They came with shoes. We gave them away because they outgrew them, and we never bought shoes again because they didn't need them. And we had no use for them. And anytime I did buy them shoes, they would take them and lose them. So I was like, I'm not buying you any shoes.
We all had sandals.
We all had
and we were just sandals it up. Yeah.
So we're like having to buy all these things the kids need. So when I get back, I'm running around doing all this, like literally the day before we fly, and also trying to talk to her about our next flight. And I was like, well, it's going to be like an 8-hour flight. Like, I don't want her screaming on an 8-hour flight.
Yeah.
And now he has to deal with her again now on this flight.
Well, so it didn't go away overnight. Like even the few flights right after we started flying, she was still she was better than she was initially.
Yes.
But she was still terrified. She still had some fear around it, and it required us to talk and I had to hold her many different times on many different flights. So it wasn't something that just went away right away.
And for those who are listening to this for the first time and don't know our family and don't know Linabelle's situation, there's an entire podcast on her. It's also on my highlights on my Instagram, so you can go to either place to find out. But basically, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, which caused a lot of seizures, and that led to her brain not developing as an average kid. So while physically nothing's wrong with her, the way her brain works is just very different than your average child.
Yeah.
So navigating her and her situations and the things that arise is very different than, dealing with an average kid.
So that was the first challenge in the traveling experience.
Yeah. Was like, what are we going to do with our child who doesn't understand things like others and now has developed this fear of flying, and we have no idea where it's even stemming from? Was our new challenge, which I've eventually figured it out. It only happened maybe 3, 4, 5 flights. And then after that, she was like smooth sailing. After that, like, she would mention it talking, but now it turned into a conversation versus her freaking out about the flight. And we can get into that if...
what I wanted to say was I wanted to dive into the reality expectation on my end when we started this.
Yes.
In a sense of when we decided to travel and experience the world, I told myself, oh, we're going to be a traveling family. I wanted to start a YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to document all of this.
He was going around telling everybody, like, I'm going to be documenting this. It's going to be on YouTube. Yeah. And me knowing how Alex functions, I said, great, I can't wait to see this. He was like, no, you're going to help me with this. I said, no, I'm not. I said, if you are doing this, this is on you. I want nothing to do with a YouTube channel. I want nothing to do with editing. I said, I will not be doing this with you. You were talking about hours and hours and hours of work that I do not want to put into a YouTube channel.
And I, all good intentions, I am classified as a millennial, technically. You know, I was born in 1990. We were born in 1990. But when it comes to technology, I am not a millennial.
I lump him with my parents often. I said, "Oh, honey, how are we the same age?" I'm like, "You just remind me of my parents when it comes to technology."
Look, I'm a visionary. I got good ideas. I see things from a different perspective.
Technology is not his thing.
And the idea of family traveling and blogging and doing all that, I still would love to do it, but it's not one of my strong suits.
He's like, "I want to do this, but I'm going to have other people who do everything for me." I'm like, "So basically, you're just going to have other people do it for you."
So that I wanted to speak about that before we dove into the travels, is because I said that a lot, and people were like, "Oh, we're so excited! Send us the link." And so if you're listening to this, or if you followed my Instagram or Giselle's, and when we had,
I did more of the blogging on my Instagram than he did anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking about, I go through his phone and I'm like, where are even the pictures of this place? Like, you don't even have a picture, not even like one picture of like certain places we went to.
So I have a ton of pictures. I have a ton of photos and had some ideas around capturing New York City, because that was going to be my test run, and then also London, which great pictures. And
then after that, it was like,
and then I kind of died because I then switched in my head, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to lean into being present and going with the flow.
And we didn't talk about this in the last podcast, and now it's a good time. Was we talked about how my sister was moving out here, and she didn't. And then how she ended up joining us in our travels.
So we talked about part of our thought processes of shifting once we got the eviction, so to speak, notice.
Yes. So I just informed her of it. I didn't tell her like, "Oh, come join us in the travels" or anything. I said, "Look, we're not going to be in Dominican Republic anymore. I know that you still really want to quit your job and leave." I said, "Obviously, I'm not going to be here, but I said, it's your choice. Like, I can give you a few of my friends' numbers. I can kind of tell you like area where you're probably going to want to live." I said, "I think you should still do it for yourself, because it's a really great place to come and reset, and the cost of living is so low. But I said, we obviously won't be here, so that's your decision to make which way you go." I didn't know where she was at as far as like, I'm leaving, I'm not leaving, but she was already like, "I'm leaving no matter what." So when I told her our plans later, when we finally made the decision to start these travels, and I told her our plans, she said, "Take me with you." Like, she didn't even like think. She said, "Just take me with you." And I was like, "What do you mean, take you with us?" I was like, she's like, "I just don't." She's like, "I'm not going to go to the Dominican Republic to live by myself. Like, I only wanted to go because you guys were there." And she's like, "I've always wanted to travel the world." She had only been to this country herself. Like, she had never traveled outside of the United States and Dominican Republic. She's like, "I want to go." And I was like, "Okay, let me talk to Alex to see what we can come up with, because you're going to need some type of income." And I said, "We can figure this out, how you can still come with us and what we can do." She has worked in kitchens or used to work in kitchens for many years, like sous chef. I was like, "Well, you cook, you can help us with the kids. Like, we'll figure something out." So I told Alex, and we both agreed that we would have her travel with us and cook for us and help us in that way, because neither of us wanted to take on the cooking, as well as, watching the kids here and there, so we could go on date nights, so we could go out, so we could do things like that. So then going to New York, by the time we got there, she had also already moved out of her apartment in Virginia, had sold all of her stuff. She has a teenage daughter who decided she did not want to come with her. So she ends up moving with her dad to another state. And she was there waiting for us in New York when we got there. She already had been there, I think, a month or a few weeks before we got there. So when we took off from New York, she joined our party. We went and picked her up, and she joined our party, our crazy Lang family caravan.
Yeah. So we had covered, living expenses and food, lodging, some travel. And
there was a stipend
that she would get a stipend every month.
That we paid her monthly.
Like something that she wanted to do. Like, there was still some type of income that she could do things she wanted to do on her own dime that was not associated with us. And that was a good alternative. I want to dive into this for a second because last episode we did, like, we both felt like everybody's in charge of their own decision. First of all, like they're in charge of their own life and the choices they make. But we opened this door, this avenue, and she had fully leaped, and so part of us felt like, hey, we needed to help figure things out, and it just beautifully played out the way that it did, to where there was creativity. It authentically came that way. It wasn't like a forced thing where we were pushing for her to come.
Yeah. Like it was, she was ready to go, and that's what I told her. I was like, I don't want you to do this because we've switched our mind. Because at the end of the day, like, it's your life. And she had already been in this state for 10 years, in the same apartment for over 5. Like, she had, in a sense, set roots down. Like, this was her life and her daughter's life. And I was like, I don't want you to like uproot yourself because of what we do. Like, this is our life, and we're with all our kids.
We're very adaptable, and
and it was really hard for her to leave her daughter. You know, like, her daughter had never lived with her dad or anything like that. So like, that was something that she had to navigate. And she might have a podcast out by this time, and if not, it'll be out soon. So she dives into that in her own podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we get to London, and it's 8 of us now because my sister joined us.
Well, we get to New York then.
We get to New York, and there's 8 of us, and we're all living now in my parents' apartment for a short time. It felt like back in the old days.
We had an 11-day layover in New York City.
Yeah.
And we flew there. In the last episode, we talked about not getting our deposit back. It had turned nasty a little bit, and I had gotten frustrated, and so Giselle decided, you know what, I'm going to go back. And so she after 3 days in New York City,
I come back to DR for 5.
She goes back to DR for 5, which was not a part of the plan. It was not we had sold all of our stuff, and
I stayed with some friends in Puerto Plata. I just brought the baby with me, Liam, of course, because he's breastfed, and I couldn't leave him behind. And I tried to fight it, and I did, like I said before, I didn't make any progress because the landlord not being in the country, basically the housing department that deals with those legal issues here didn't want to make a decision on either way, which in a sense, by not making a decision, they did make a decision because he got to keep my money.
Yeah.
And at that point, I gave up. I was like, I don't care. I tried to get a lawyer to do something about it, and it didn't budge. And I was like, you know what? I'm leaving it to the universe. Yeah. Like, I am not one who typically goes after and wants to fight things like this. And at the same time, I was like, people need to know, like, it's not okay to do things that are out of integrity, take advantage and things that are wrong. And the way he went about it was very wrong. Like, if we had that money in damages, then I would have been like, you know what? Absolutely. We damaged your apartment. Keep it. I don't have a problem paying for things that we truly destroyed. But the amount he took was not even close to the damages that were in the apartment. The damages were very minor, and we even discussed that with him. We said, hey, if you tell us fair pricing, like, we will pay you the damages. He wanted no negotiation when it came to that. He just wanted to keep all 3 of our deposits.
Yeah. So that unexpected, Giselle went back for 5 days. There was some things that we needed to close up, or we wanted to buy. We had we had a vision of how we were going to handle that time. Totally different. It was totally different than what we had planned. So it was a beautiful introduction to Catherine, because when Giselle left, I was only with the 4 kids. Catherine was there, and she had already gotten integrated and started to spend time with the kids, and she took the kids out and got to see firsthand
what it's like.
Because even though she has our kids are her nieces and nephews, and she hasn't been around them. She hasn't been around them. And
because we've always, even when we lived in Virginia, we were like 6 hours?
4 hours.
4 hours away. She worked full time. We were pretty busy people too. Like, Alex was working, so we didn't see each other. We didn't visit each other often.
Maybe once every 4 or 5, maybe 6 months tops.
If that, yeah. So we didn't see each other often, even though we lived in the same state.
Yeah.
So that was the first time that she spent more time with my kids and by herself. And she's a mom of a single child, just only child. So there's a lot of different things going on when there's 4 young, energizing children, and my children's energy is way different to her daughter's energy, and we both joke like she doesn't even know what she's really
signed up for. Yeah.
We're like, she doesn't know the wildness and the chaos that she just signed up for.
But the reality is her soul knew, because that's what everything that she got to experience, everything that she did experience was a part of her own journey that
she had to be there.
She had to go through. And
yeah.
So she got to see that and help out, and the kids enjoyed it. They actually, I was surprised how they took to her so fast, because we know our kids, and they've not always.
They don't warm up to people like right away.
Even in our own families, right? There's some resistance and hesitancy, just because being in the military, moving all the time, we had not always grown up so close. We tried. We prioritize that in our own family, being close to the family as much as we can. But so there was some hesitancy. But with her, it was like, okay,
best friend.
Let's go to the planetarium. Let's go to the museum where they went.
There's a funny story when she tells me I wasn't there, and she calls me later that day when she took them to the planetarium. That Linneval goes in, and it's a big dome, and it feels like you're in the sky and everything's moving. That Linneval went in there, and Linneval was like, "Get me out of here! Take me home now! Take me home right now!" Linneval just like flipped on her and was like, "If you don't take me out of this planetarium, like your world is going to end right now." But I mean, it makes sense with everything that went on with her brain. Like sensory things, for her are like huge. Like being sensory and being in a planetarium is literally a sensory overload, even for a regular adult. So like for Linneval, she's like, "Why is this moving? Why am I in here? Why is it dark?" And she's like, "I had to take her out." She's like, "We had to walk out and wait outside, like we couldn't watch the show because she was just not having it."
Yeah.
So that was like her introduction to, and like when Linneval says something, she means it, and she's not changing her mind. That child knows what she wants, and no one convinces her out of her mind, which is sometimes amazing to watch and equally as frustrating to mother.
Agreed. And for me, I'm thankful for this. She's very connected to me.
Yes.
And doesn't want most of the time doesn't want anybody else
to
solve her problems or do anything.
Or help her or assist, except Alexander.
So I'm grateful for it, and sometimes it can be mentally
exhausting. He looks at me and he's like, "Help me." I'm like, "She doesn't want me. She wants me."
Which is back to like being when we just had the boys didn't want me. It was only Jasil. So now I got to experience
what it feels like
firsthand, what it feels like, and same with Lumi. The girls only want me, which is I love it.
But it's funny, the moment he leaves, they're fine with me. But when he's around, it's like dad or nothing. And we have a funny story about that in July, the Camino with Lenoa. But we'll talk about that later. So we get to London as a family of 8.
Which the flight was way better than I thought.
The flight was great. The kids slept. Also, our kids aren't on iPads or like screens all day. So having a screen in front of them, they were zombified. And I was absolutely okay with it. I was like, it's an 8-hour flight. I don't care. Get on your screen. So we had headphones for all the kids. The one that didn't, we gave them some. I'm like, please give the kids the headphones. We don't need headphones. And they were amazing. I think that we get fed like 2 meals and a snack, and everybody ate and slept and ate and slept. And we get there and everything's great.
And it was the morning.
Yeah, we get there like early morning.
Oh no, midday.
There was a little bit of a trek from the airport to the Airbnb. It was
an hour and a half.
Because we stayed outside of the city looking for a lower cost of a place that could accommodate 8 people. And London is the city. It's expensive to stay in the city. And when we looked into hostels and things like that, because once again, we're so many people, it's not cost effective to stay in hostels.
Well, we learned a learning experience with the travels was we did in the last episode, we talked about Skyscanner, or no, this episode, we talked about Skyscanner, and we did Explore Everywhere. What we didn't do was look up the cost of things in London first to see if that was indeed the great.
So that was one of the learning experiences of travel, is like the cheapest flight into a country isn't always the cheapest accommodation or food. So when you look into a country, don't only look at the cheapest flight, also look at lodging, also look at the food cost,
Transportation, like public transportation.
because if you're going to be doing all those things or like eating out often, it's going to play a role into your budget and how much you can afford, or where your money should go in that country. Like there's countries where we're like, we want our money more to go into experience. And then there's countries where we're like, well, we just want the really nice Airbnb. Like, so that was like our learning curve of how to do that. We didn't read, we didn't look up, we didn't research. We're like, let's just go and do it.
Just going by the seat of our pants.
We're like, let's just figure this out. And I know there's hundreds of blogs and YouTubes. I didn't care. Plus,
we tried to watch them.
Time.
We tried to watch them.
Yes.
And it was like, we had so many things.
And it really just comes down to your family dynamic too. Like every single family is going to care about different things, is going to travel differently, is going to have different needs. And we didn't have time. Like we went from we're staying here to we're moving to we're traveling full time to we have to sell everything in our apartment. So we just didn't have the time to sit down and do research. We're like, we got to do this. We got to go. So we did. We get to London. We take our trek through multiple transportations, trains and bus and whatnot. We get to our Airbnb. It was this cozy little house outside of the city. I think a 5-minute walk from the train, so it wasn't too bad. So we were able to easily access transportation.
Well, after we bought the tickets to London, we then, because we don't have a car, we were looking for, one of the things that we became aware about was being near public transportation. Yeah. So we did get a place that was close enough to public transportation that we could get into the city, into London, downtown London, because we were on the east side of London. And so
I don't remember what side of London I was on.
It was a trek. I will say this, that we learned a lot because in London, having a big family, the train traveling system, there's so many different train connections and national.
Yeah, I grew up in New York. Yeah.
It's not the same as
one price, all buses, all trains, and they're all connected, and you can transfer them. Once you pay, once you're inside, you don't have to pay again. And then you get to Europe, and it's completely different. And I was like, I don't even know what we're doing here.
So we paid like $180 to get from the airport to
which then we found out that a cab would have been around the same price.
Around the same, yeah. And no transfers and all
yeah, and I was like, next time we just take the damn taxi, and which we did in some cities, and you pay about 180 to 200 euro sometimes from airport to Airbnb. But I was like, you know what? I don't care. We all get in one bus and one van, and we get there, and we're there, and that's it. Yeah. Because you got to think this public transportation is also for people's daily commute. And we're here with all these suitcases and luggages, and the left door opens and the right door, and you got to shift and you got to move. And sometimes it's just better to get in a van and just get there. And we always said, look, if it's the one-time thing, we'll do it. Like, we'll pay the big bucks for the one-time thing. Now, what we're not going to do is pay this every day, But I was like, if it's just from the airport, we agreed after hitting these little hiccups, and it's like, if it's the airport to the Airbnb, we will pay what we have to pay in cab fees to just get there and arrive, especially after long travel days.
Long travel days. You think that you're going to be okay, and you go through the whole process. A lot of our flights were like early morning.
Yeah.
And by the time that you get there, the kids are hungry.
You don't have snacks.
Yeah.
Somebody's tired. Somebody's complaining about their backpack. But I will give my kids so much credit. I don't think we ever had
the boys. And the girls were good. Sometimes we had to carry their backpacks.
Yes, but like, I can't say that they ever had a huge meltdown or fight or struggle to where we felt like we couldn't continue in our travel day. They've always mustered up the courage, and with a good little pep talk, they were game to keep going. And that's something that, people are like, oh, I can never imagine doing this with our kids. Well, it has a lot to do with preparation, mindset, and how you speak to your kids, right? And we've always been a family, like, we talk up our kids. We talk up their confidence. We explain things before we're arriving to them. And
we're realistic with, when they ask, is this going to, for instance, just is this going to hurt? Well, yes, it's
going to hurt, but we can also work on these things that will make the pain lessen, right? Yeah. And that's something that I take very like serious is not lying to my kids. And the reason, like he talks about, is I mentioned it slightly in the last podcast. One of the things that we experienced in that 2-year gap was Lumi splitting her head open
to her skull,
down to her skull, like she a wooden step stool fell right on the head hairline of her forehead, and her skin split open maybe like 8 stitches down.
They needed 17, 2 different.
Okay, but just the top. It was like an 9 stitch thing. But it split her head all the way down to her skull, which is like really bad to see. When I saw, I am not usually grossed out by stuff, and that got me. I was like, oh, why do I see my daughter's skull? I should not be seeing her skull right now. And after the initial crying, she never cried again. We went to the hospital. We got her stitched up. She did not cry a single tear in the hospital, not while they put the anesthesia into her forehead to stitch her up, not during the stitches. And what did we do the whole time? We talked her through it. We taught her to use her breath, to calm herself, to be present. And we showed her that we were there. And that's essentially the same tools we used during traveling when our kids started complaining, when our kids started complaining about being tired, their backpacks being too heavy. If we could help them out, we did. But there was moments where we were packed and we couldn't. And we would tell them, look, buddy, let's take a deep breath. Where are we right now? What are we doing as a family? Why are we doing this? Why is this important to us? Now, do you see me? Do you see what I have on me? Can I help you? Can anybody else of our group help me? No, I'm the only one who can carry it. Okay, so why don't you put it down for a few minutes? Take a deep breath. Let's regulate ourselves. Do you need water? Do you need a snack? And if we had to pause, we would pause.
And in those moments, modeling it ourselves, because there is a co-regulation aspect of it. We can't help if we're not helping ourselves first. Like, we can't help them be calm if we're on edge. And so that a lot of times, if like Jasil was a little aggravated, or if I was a little aggravated,
we would tell ourselves.
We would talk to each other and say, hey, like,
you're not acting in integrity of what you're trying to teach your child. So maybe we need to fix ourselves first. Yeah. Hold that backpack, So we had to tell ourselves it says the recording has stopped due to incoming call. Is it back on though?
It's back on now.
Okay. Sorry guys. This is the first time we use this and we're doing this, so we're figuring it out.
Yeah.
But it is recording. Cool. So let's continue. Was that a phone call?
No, it was Liam's alarm.
Okay, look at Alex and do not disturb. But anyhow, we learned how to have these conversations early on with our kids, especially after dealing with the Linneval airplane situation and all that. Like, hey, there's going to be these times. They're going to happen anyway. Even if you never move, never travel, your child's going to have a meltdown. Your child's going to disagree with something. Your child's going to say something's hard. How do you deal with those in everyday life? So when people tell us, we have no idea how you did this. Why would you travel with 5 kids? That seems so tough. We could never do this. For us, it was just implementing those same basic rules, that same foundation, now just on our travels. And yes, travels does add different stresses. It does add different worries. Yes, it does add different responsibilities. But for us, it was about coming back to that foundation of the way we've been living our life, and now we're just going to do it on the go. So the same conversation that I would have had with my son if I was on a long hike with him back at home, it's the same conversation I'm going to have with him when he's struggling with his heavy bag. The other part of this is we didn't choose what they packed in their bags. Like, aside from the clothes that they needed, their bags were extra heavy from everything they chose.
We said you can have, the rule that we made was you can have what you can carry in your backpack.
So what did that mean? That after 2 months, guess what they started to realize? That they didn't want to carry all the things that they had put into their own bags. And that was our way of teaching them that self-responsibility of like, I am not carrying your toys. I'm not carrying your extra, trinkets, all the things you collect on the way. I was like, every suitcase has its purpose and everybody has their own space. There was certain things like shared arts and crafts and things that we were willing to put into our checked-in luggage. But everything that was on their carry-on bag that went on their backpack was because they put it. So when they complained about my backpack's too heavy, they were traveling with these Star Wars adult size helmets for like 2 months. And that became a big thing. They're like, we don't want to carry them. They're too heavy. And I said, who brought the helmet? I did. Do you want to get rid of it? No. So what do you have to do? Carry it.
I think for me also, like in this time, is the most challenging. One of the most challenging things is in my parenthood journey is to not put my own beliefs on the kids. I'm saying this because of those darn helmets, right? Like, how goofy do they look? I'm sharing an honest insight here. How goofy do they look walking through the airport or holding them in line? Like I had to be very aware of not saying
military stuff. Just like, like stop it with that helmet.
And in my mind, what I was going through was like, this is embarrassing. Like, I created this story, but reality is they're kids.
And people would laugh and actually
they would enjoy it. Like, they would walk on the airplanes with the helmets on and walk through the aisles.
People would just
laugh. People are laughing and stuff. And no one would tell them that they couldn't have them because they were wearing them. It was so it's not like, oh, this bag is too big. So it wasn't a thing of like we had to pay extra for it. So I couldn't say, hey,
but it
boys,
was,
they
would get more tired because they had their backpacks and then they have like the helmet was huge for them and they're carrying this helmet now, which most times was also stuffed with more stuff that they had. So it was just like, it became this thing of on the long travel days, on the days we had to take public transportation, we had not only the backpacks and our suitcases, but then all these little things that we're carrying with us. We
weren't as mobile as what we had expected in our travel. So here we thought that it was going to be very fluid in travels, and in reality was we were weighing ourselves down.
Yes, because of all the stuff that we wanted to bring with us, or like even us, like we had to do a whole like every few weeks we had to go through everything, be like, okay, what am I not using? What do I really not need? What haven't I touched in the last 30 or 45 days? Like, what do I need to get rid of? And that's something that we learned from that big London travel, that first month, and then also then traveling to France, was our fluidity in being able to travel with all this stuff is like, okay, we have to be realistic now. This is the realistic versus the expectation.
Let me tell you, I had a vision of it being even more. I was cold tubbing before we decided to travel. I committed to a 1-year journey of cold tubbing every single day, and I was on day 120 straight. Like, no issues. I wasn't having any problems. But now, because we had chose to travel, I needed to figure out a way to continue my journeys.
I'm going to do my 365 days cold tubbing. I committed to this. I'm in 120 days. I am not canceling
I bought a portable small cold tub that it was not as small as I thought, but
that was one of the arguments we had. I was like, you are being so unrealistic right now. I'm like, who the fuck travels with a cold tub, not by themselves, but with 5 other kids? I was like, where are you going to fit this cold tub? And he's like, you don't worry about that. I have my own bag. I'm carrying my cold tub.
And I bought a bag that was able to carry it. It would have been extremely, even more heavy than it was. But I had bought in the plastic rubber molds for the ice, like 12 to 14. And then I also didn't realize another waking up, because when we were stationed overseas,
this is just one of his things. We're going to get into Alex's suitcase.
I didn't have much other than that at the moment.
The cups, the massage gun, the acupuncture mat. You wanted to bring all those things.
I wanted to, but
they were.
Yes, but I didn't bring the cups nor the.
But the massage gun came with you. The microphone that you never touched. We can go down the list.
Yeah, we can. But where I'm going with this is, Europe and other countries don't have the same size freezer.
He's the Gucci traveler. So. I'm the easy backpacker. This is he needs an entourage. He needs like rechecked bags. He needs his whole body things, all his massage and body. What do you want to call this? Your wellness suitcase. He needs a wellness suitcase.
Well, I mentioned to you all in the last episode that
he does struggle.
I have a lot of physical ailments that hurt, and there's more root that I need to address, right? So by no means am I bypassing that, but I was, knowing myself, I was saying I need this, and this.
Basically, whatever a physical therapy office has, he owned, and he was trying to find a way to pack it into a suitcase and bring it with him. And I literally told him, I said, you're going to need a whole suitcase just for that.
Yeah.
And I was like, and we need suitcases for the actual things we need to travel. So one of the things that we also, expectation versus reality, was the seasons that we were going to be going through with 7 people, and what we were, like, if you're going to one climate, like let's say I'm just going to travel Asia, it's very simple to pack, to be like, oh, well, I'm only going to be in beach tropical towns. Then cool, shorts, t-shirts, sandals, done.
Well, our initial expectation was 70 and above.
Yes, but then we realized we get to London and it's cold.
It's in the low or the high 50s.
June. We were talking about June, and we needed sweaters and jackets and rain jackets. The 5 days we spent in London in the summer was not hot.
Yeah.
And I'm here thinking, oh, most places are at least warm-ish. No, it was not warm in London. Then we go to France. It's not warm in France either. So we had to
adjust. It was a little bit warmer than London,
yes,
but it was still cold.
And we had to.
For some reason, the universe this year, the 8 months that we were traveling, everything was a little bit colder except Italy, where we were at, and Sicily. Every other place was colder than it normally was during that time of the year. So we got to experience, instead of 70s and above everywhere we were going, where we wanted to, our idea, it was.
So we had to, we had 3 checked-in bags. One of those was just his. The other 2 was for me and the kids, and then our extra stuff. But all saying this, that we had to travel basically with a whole year's worth of clothes, like in the sense of every weather, or every season. We had to travel with winter stuff, with spring stuff, with summer stuff. Like, we had everything, and we did bring it down to bare bones. Like, every kid only had 2 shoes. The girls were the only ones who had 3. I think we had 3, or I don't know about you.
I had hiking boots, running shoes, and sandals.
Same thing. I had a hiking shoe, a running shoe, and sandals. That was it. And I had water shoes that I traveled with. But the point is, we weren't traveling. We're like, oh my gosh, we have so much stuff. Everybody was down to 1 or 2 sweaters, few shirts, and 1 or 2 pants, or 2, which we ended up, as we traveled, needing to buy the kids more clothes because they were wearing their stuff and going through them so often, and we didn't expect as much cold weather as we got.
We had to buy some cold weather.
So we had to buy more cold weather sweatpants, long sleeve shirts, things like that, because our summer was so short. And then we headed back into.
I'm talking about 5-inch shorts and tank tops, if that was what we were dressed in a lot.
So that was another big thing of why we had to, we both said, oh, we wish we could just travel with backpacks, but when you do 7 times anything, it's already 7. You start just 7 times 1 is 7. So 7 people, if you need sandals, that's already 7 sandals, 7 pairs of sandals. Then you add shoes in. Now you're talking about 21. It adds up so fast when you have 7 people.
So I think this is all relevant. Why we went into this was because it was the reality of it. It was so far off of the expectation that it opened our eyes, and it was beautiful. It was a very beautiful lesson because we can sit back and laugh at it now, but we would have never known if we didn't just dive into it. So that's the importance of it, is there's going to be things along your journey, whatever journey it may be in ours it's the traveling journey, that you're not going to know until you experience it, and then you just have to adapt when you're in that moment, and not let it beat you up or over consume you. Just go with the flow and enjoy it, laugh about it, and make the necessary adjustments. For us, we had to. In Italy, after the few countries, we let go of a lot of things.
So back to London, we get there, and we're thinking, hey, maybe 1 or 2 days to get over jet lag. We should be good, and then we'll go explore London. Well, the 5 days we spent there were pulling teeth for us to wake up at a regular time.
And not just the kids, all of us.
All of us. Everyone was we were like zombies. It was so hard.
I think the earliest that we left the house was 1:30 or 2
1:30
in the afternoon.
Yeah, like we just could not wake up and get going in the morning. It was so difficult. And I'm sure that the weather, not seeing the sun for I don't think we saw the sun for the 5 days that we were there. Like there was just.
It was very cloudy. There was one day I think there was a sun.
Oh yeah,
in
the
the
day.
park.
Yes, that was like the only day that there was finally sun and it felt warm-ish. I remember I was in a short sleep and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it feels like spring." This is amazing.
And that's actually the warmest.
That was the warmest day out of all the days we were there.
Yeah.
So that was like another big thing that we said if we ever do this again, and for some reason going from the United States to London was a lot harder than London to the United States. Like going
Europe to
the time difference going that way was harder than going the other way.
Right.
But the other expectation that we realized that we had to change for the future is that if we ever do that travel again, we have to allow ourselves more days on the front end to adjust. Because we thought 5 days in London was enough.
If we're jumping ahead of time.
Yes, that if we're going that way, like jumping ahead of time, we were like, 5 days, that's more than enough. It shouldn't take us more than 2 or 3 days to adjust. But all of us were struggling heavily to adjust to the time difference. And I know that some people are like, go grounding, be in nature, like all of those things will help you reset. We went outside, we were barefoot, we were touching the ground, and we could not kick feeling exhausted and tired. And we would set alarms and we'd wake up, and by like 2 hours later, we're like, oh my gosh, I need a nap. And so we spent a lot of those days cooped up in the house. There was a few days where we're like, look, no excuses. We are getting on a train tomorrow and we need to get out of this house. Because if not, we're not going to kick this. We're like, we need to do this. And that's what we did.
And we didn't see as much as we wanted to. And we're not beating ourselves up here, but we didn't see it. We had this expectation of seeing so much.
Things planned.
And we accomplished maybe a quarter of that. But we still enjoyed time. We still had a good time.
We enjoyed it. The kids got to see some things that they really wanted to see. We got to see the city. And
we got to see Stonehenge. And that's something that I didn't think that.
And that was something that we said that we were not going to do. And then we ended up still doing it.
Because it was like a 2 hour in total journey outside of the city.
Yep.
It was like a long train/bus. And so it was.
And then we get there and we find out that we didn't buy the ticket that takes you all the way over there. So we had to like walk all this way. Yeah. But that was fine too. We were like, screw it. Yeah, like we're like, let's walk it. And we got to go and see Stonehenge. We actually didn't even pay to go on the inside because that was like a bunch of more money. But they were like, there's this path. If you take the path, it's right outside. They're like, you won't go right up to it, which they still have it roped off. No one can actually go and touch it. But they're like, you get to see it without having to pay the extra.
We were just like 10 feet away from where the people that
paid
who were
inside.
To see. Yeah. So it was, and there was no gates. It was totally visible.
Yep.
So it was amazing. And the cool thing was we got to learn about stinging nettle firsthand. Like we were walking in the path down, and Linabelle had tripped and fallen.
No. They were running, they were playing, and they were chasing each other. And she launched herself into the bush because they were playing.
A stinging nettle bush. Anybody that knows what stinging nettle is, it's a plant.
And they didn't know that obviously like it was all covered in stinging nettles. And they were playing that they were like playing like Star Wars or something.
Look, I don't even know until this point what stinging nettle is. So if you don't know, that's totally okay. But Linabelle just starts screaming like Bloody Mary, and I think she like breaks an ankle or something.
And she's looking behind, and she's like holding her thighs and her legs, and she is screaming. She's like, yes! Ah!
She starts stripping, and I'm like, Linabelle, we can't. Like, there's people, walking
the path, and she starts trying to take off her clothes, and we're like, what is going on? But then I was like, let her take it off because something's happening, and we need to see why.
So over half the walk, Linabelle has no pants on. She has underwear on, but no pants.
She took off her pants. And at first, you don't see anything, right? Like, at first, we're like, what is it? Why is she screaming? And it took a couple of minutes. Finally, we start seeing
she breaks out in a little rash.
Yeah, like we start seeing the rash, like from the stinging nettles, like in red circles come out all over her thighs and her legs. And we realized that she had jumped into a bush of stinging nettles. So then after that, we're like, hey, kids, unless you know what's on the side of a road or what's in even an open field, like you should probably take a look and make sure that the plants that are there are not gonna, sting you.
Which is, I wouldn't say set a precedent, but what I noticed
They were
after our
more
travels.
aware.
Not were they just more aware, but they were actually curious about the plants that were around
Yes.
when we went places. They would look and
then they
ask
could
questions.
identify stinging nettles anywhere we went.
They did identify stinging nettles. Even when we did the Camino, which we'll talk about in a future episode, or the Via Francigena, excuse me, Linabelle would always say, "That's a stinging nettle." Like,
yeah, Linabelle did not forget what a stinging nettle was after that. She's like, "That is stinging nettle. I'm not getting near it."
So we went to Stonehenge. We got to see the Big Ben, I think is what it was called, the big clock.
Yes, the clock.
Yes, Big Ben. We got to see some of the normal touristy
Which I
things
think
there.
is called the Elizabeth Tower, but people have nicknamed it Big Ben.
The kids got to experience watching a soccer game, a football game in Europe, in a pub, and the whole pub just going crazy, which I knew because
For Grace, if you know anything about Grayson's very similar to Alex. They're all into the sports and sportsmanship and crowds, and so when the pub like exploded, Grayson was
eyes like blew up, and I knew it was coming. Yeah.
Did you hear everyone scream?
And I played into it too, so I wasn't rooting for any team, but it was the World Cup. I think the World Cup.
I have no idea.
But England, the country was playing, and when we were in England, and it was actually a local game, so it was the first time that they were hosting at the Euro Cup, not the World Cup. They were hosting the Euro Cup, so everybody was invested. Everybody was dressed up. It was a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
When they scored the goal,
the burgers were really good.
The burgers were really good. They erupted, and I didn't care, so I just erupted too, and Grayson had a good time. So it was a cool experience for all the kids to see a different perspective in sports.
Yeah, they had never, I don't think they had ever experienced that like that.
And they started singing, because we were in a pub, and this is very common.
This is very common. Singing.
We didn't just go to a bar, because Jason and I don't drink.
Yeah.
But
it was the only place where we were walking that had food.
Yeah.
And we saw kids, in the United States or whatever, you don't typically take kids to pubs. Like, that's not a thing. But in Europe, that's completely different. Common. It's very common that you can go and eat and drink, and your kids are there too.
So we're in the pub, people are drinking, and they just start breaking out into their the chant, the team chant, and it was just fun.
And Grace is like, "How do they all know this?" Yeah. And we're like, "They love the team, so they know what they're saying." And Grace is like, "I want to sing with them," but I was like, "Just copy them."
So the beautiful thing is, we get to London. Neither of us, the way we were traveling initially, like we said, we had not had flights out of London.
Yeah.
We knew that our Airbnb was done on the 20th of June, and we had flown in on like the 15th, I believe. I bought tickets. I bought tickets on June 19th. June 19th, I bought tickets.
Like the night before we're supposed to check out of the Airbnb, I was like, "Hey, I know we're having a good time, but I remember we had gotten into a disagreement about choosing the next place, and I said, you know what? You can do this by yourself. I don't care. Just choose a place." I'm like, "Don't even tell me." I'm like, "Surprise me. Just choose a place." So like the 19th, I'm like, "Hey, do we even know where we're going yet?" And he's like, "No, I'm gonna do it tonight. I promise, before I go to sleep." I'm like, "Well, it's either we go to and stand in the train station or the airport." But I was like, "We need to know
London was extremely expensive.
It was very expensive, so we're like,
it was out of our current budget. Yeah.
I was like, "We need to get out of London. We cannot stay in London."
Yeah.
I was like, "We need to go."
So I do that whole process myself, and using the same function of Skyscanner. And I learned, we started creating a checklist after this trip specifically about where we were going next. I didn't look at anything where we were going. I just go on Skyscanner, and I go explore everywhere.
And chose the cheapest flights.
Cheapest flights. And the beautiful thing is, in the United States, anybody that's listening that's located in the United States, last minute travel can be expensive. And so here I am, a little worried, like, oh, this might be a really expensive thing. In Europe, traveling is cheap, way cheaper than in the United States. So I found $14 flights per person.
Well, that's also, they don't include luggage. Yeah. So then luggage is an add-on. So 14 plus luggage, but still super cheap compared to what you would pay in the States to fly between cities.
So we were doing a lot of one-ways. So it was a one-way from London to it was to Lords. I'm trying. but the airport was Lourdes. We ended up staying in Tarbes, but the airport we were flying into was Lourdes, France. Not knowing anything, we're not religious either, by the way. We'll get into this in a minute, but not knowing anything about it. But I knew the Pyrenees Mountains, and it was Lourdes Pyrenees Airport. So I was like, oh, we could be next to the mountains, and we're gonna get to go explore the Pyrenees Mountains. And so then I just Googled I went on Airbnb after that and started looking, and everything was a little bit more expensive than I thought, but I found a place for 15 or 16 days. I can't remember the exact days.
It was 10 days. We spent exactly 10 days in France.
Okay. Yes. Okay. For 10 days, I found a place that was pretty inexpensive, and I thought that transportation would be easily available there, and that was a opening experience. So
I think that was one of our first arguments. We get there.
I felt like I did a good job. I'm like, man, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody until I got the tickets, and then we got to our location in the terminal. I'm like, we're here, and they were like, Lourdes, France. We're going to France. Cool. Everybody was excited. I thought I did a good job. And then we land there, and that's when some turbulence hit.
Because we get there and we realize that there's no public transportation and no one really speaks English. No one speaks English. Everybody's speaking in French. And we can't get a damn taxi out of the airport. All the taxis had to be called to come pick you up. And that's when we realized that this was a very small airport. It's not a big international airport. So if you want to get out,
and the airport closed. The airport closed right after we arrived. Right. So our bags, because we were last off the plane.
Literally, the airport was like, "You need to get out.
Yeah.
We're done."
They locked the doors. They turned everything off.
And I'm like, "Where the heck did you just bring us? There's no one to help us. We need to get out of here." And we don't even speak French. I took a semester in college, but Lord knows I don't know how to.
I called a taxi company, the operator, because I didn't speak French.
They literally hung up on us.
He got mad and he hung up.
They wouldn't talk to us. They're like, and
I realized that's part of the culture. So I at first was like, man, these people are rude. But that's a part of their culture, how they operate.
They are very straightforward, no time for nonsense or bullshit. It's like, get to the point or we don't have time for you. Yeah. And we were like, okay.
And there's some nice people, don't get me wrong. I'm not by any means saying.
But the French culture shocked us.
Yeah, it shocked us a little bit.
Shocked me.
So then I went to a guy that pulled up, and he wasn't even. So when he spoke a little bit of English, and he was like, "Tar, I'm not going towards Tar. Lord." And I was like, "We're not going that way." And he finally was like, "How many people? How many people?" And I said, and he had a big van, and he basically overcharged a little bit because it was out of his way, but he charged us. And
he's like, "Fine, I'll do it," but he's like, "I'm going to charge more because nobody goes over there." And we're like, "We don't care. We just need to get there."
And I didn't know that. I thought it was easily connected. I legitimately thought, in my head, I created this story. Well, this is how we've traveled before. It's going to be.
This is my not planning husband. Yeah. And so I was like so frustrated because I'm here like the planner, like, I would have figured this out. I would have done my research. I would have this. I would have that. And I was also upset. It wasn't so much me. It was like, once the kids start, I'm hungry. Are we going to get there? I'm tired. This, that. And I'm like, Alex, these are the things that I wish you would think about when you make a plan. It's like, you have to see the plan through, all the way through, not just halfway. Because then the airport, there was no food in the airport.
And we were all day traveling.
Yeah.
So then when we finally, about an hour after we were there for an hour waiting, we get into the taxi, we get there. It's only a 15-minute drive. We weren't far from the airport. But then we didn't have food. So then we had to go on a walk.
We had to figure out where the supermarket was, where to get food, all of that. So we ended up just getting them something quick, right, at that little spot. Yeah. Because I was like, well, they're hungry. We don't have time to grocery shop, come back home, cook food, blah, 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 all of that. So we get them some food. It turns out there's a supermarket right there. And we just walked the groceries back home because we did not have a car rental. And it was like a 10-minute walk from the Airbnb.
And let me just say this, and this is not a negative, but Catherine was with us. She was not an experienced traveler, so her tolerance was very, very low. So we kept we kept her behind. She stayed at the apartment.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yes, and we did this ourselves because she had hit her limit throughout the day. So we did the grocery shopping. If you remember, we.
Oh yeah. Because one of the agreements that we had with her is that we didn't want to do any of the grocery.
You do the grocery shopping.
Yes.
You do the cooking. Like, you have free reign. We give you our budget.
We were like, we'll give you the credit card. You just go. You buy whatever you got to buy. And so once we arrived, we realized we're like, look, it's our kids that need to get fed, not her.
Because we were all on a little edge. Like, there was a little non-regulation on all of us. So we were just like,
frustration in the air. So we were like, look, let's just go.
We know our kids. We know ourselves. We know that nature helps us calm down. It helps us regulate. So we went out. She stayed behind.
We're like, let's go on a walk. Let's give her space to cool down, do whatever she has to do, and we'll go get groceries for the kids. So we did. And then it turned out that we had to help more often than not, because not having a vehicle, and obviously she's one person, there's only so much she could carry. We're a lot of people. We eat a lot of food. So it was either a matter of her having to shop almost every day or us going and helping her bulk shop. So a lot of times we would either send her with the boys, or we would go and we would help her pick up groceries. We were only there for 10 days. So we were like, there's no need to get a car. Like, we're here for a short time. And it wasn't till the tail end of this stay that we figured out about Lourdes and the significance of Lourdes, and going over there and actually seeing Lourdes. We ended up going back twice, because the first time we weren't like 100% like the history. We had seen it on a show, or at least I had seen it on a show before. I had forgotten.
We didn't make the connection until we went the first time.
Yes, and then after, my sister was the one that was like, oh yeah, this is that place. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. So then when we went back, we watched the episode. Is that Zac Efron show on Netflix? I forget. But he goes there. And so then my sister reminded me of that. So I went back home, watched the episode, and I was like, now I want to go back. And then we ended up going back again. Because the first time it was like on a whim. Like, we didn't even know why we went there. We were like, oh, let's go check it out. Like,
it's one of the biggest Catholic
they get like millions of tourists every year.
One of the biggest Catholic areas in the world, and there's where the Virgin Mary originated. Like, we actually started learning about Catholicism just a little bit to be able to understand the importance of the area. And the kids then, like, they were looking into it and they were learning about it. And once again, we're not very religious people. We're spiritual people, but we don't have much structure in that. Like,
but we're not of any religion. Yeah, but still, the importance, I think every religion has many crossovers and similarities. And I also believe in teaching them all and having them learn about all religions and the histories behind them and how they came to be. So it was pretty cool to be there firsthand for them to see what that meant for, like, the Catholic people. And, they were seeing the candles everywhere and the crosses and all the pictures of Jesus.
We were learning about the holy water, this healing water.
And we went in and
we drank from it. Like, we didn't know anything about it.
We went and did the ritual and everything. Yeah. And they're like, wait, what? Why do people do this? And all this. It was really cool, lived experience. I was like, you don't have to believe in something to respect it, to partake in it, to still see the significance behind the rituals and the things people do. So I always tell them to keep an open mind when being in these places and experiencing these things, because that's what, that to me is like having an open heart, and having that open mind is what allows you to take something from the experience. Like, if you go in with a negative mind, or you go in with a negative, like, thinking like, oh, these people are this way, or people of this religion are this way, then you're not going to be able to enjoy your experience that way. So I always told them, like, look, we don't believe in this. This isn't the way we conduct ourselves at home or anything. But that's okay. Like, it's okay to see something different. It's okay to go experience it. It's okay to respect it. It's okay that if you're invited into the rituals to do it, you can do it with, like, thinking of something else. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, I'm doing this because they say this is what it stands for. Like, when we did a prayer before doing the water ritual, they're like, but they're praying to their God. I was like, then you pray to what you believe in. Yeah. I was like, you don't have to pray to what they call their God. Like, pray to nature, pray to the universe, pray to whatever it is, pray to just yourself, to the experience that you're about to have. I'm like, make it your own. It's not about following and doing what they do.
Yeah. So, and what was cool was that was our first, like, meeting. We just we ran into a family from Spain and played soccer. The boys and I played soccer with all these kids in the field. And Linabelle and Lumi were climbing trees, and Liam was sitting, babbling and having a good time. We were all having a good time in a different country. We started to like fit in. I say fit in, but we were starting to
find our groove
into
the travels.
the travels, and the adaptability of it. I wanted to close when we close. I wanted to say something that came to my mind. This was actually this time in Lords was where Drusilla and I we did hit a rift. We had a challenge. We talked about the landlord and we had some disagreements. That had like transitioned, but we hit a point where for me, my parenting journey has been, in reality, I've only been like fully present, full time dad for now almost 4 years, but at the time shorter. And these travels and being exposed with the kids, I obviously have some childhood trauma, some wounds that I have, that I had to dive deeper in and understand. And Giselle and I had to have a conversation about like, hey, you need to continue, seeing your psychologist at the time to work through these things. Because it was just like energetically we were kind of like rifting.
Honestly, I don't remember.
Oh, well, that's okay. So this was
that's what I'm like sitting here. I'm like trying to think about what we went through in there, and I can't say I remember.
Well, I had stopped seeing my psychologist
after we left. Although I continued.
She
to
continued.
See him telehealth. He was just like, oh no. Well, he stopped was after he saw him first. He told me about him. I became very interested in getting to meet him, and then I started seeing him. And then he was like, well, I'm not going to see him because you're seeing him. So he never went back to me, even while we were living in Dominican Republic. And then when it came that we were going to travel, I was like, well, I still want to see you. And I knew that he was already doing telehealth, even though he said he didn't like it, because he's a very energetic person. So for him, like, it works better being in person. But I was like, you already know me. So I was like, let's do this online. So then we agreed that we would continue seeing each other via computer. And I want to say, I think maybe I missed one appointment, but I kept seeing him regularly. And then after that, maybe there was 2 or 3 times throughout our whole travels that we had some hiccups and our schedules didn't match. But I saw him pretty much our entire travels, which was really nice. But yeah, when he stopped seeing him, I believe that everyone needs someone outside of their marriage, outside of whatever relationship you're in, a neutral party in a sense, or someone that you can confide in, that can share wisdom, that can help. And for me, that was him. Like my psychologist, because to me, it wasn't somebody that I just went and like gave all my problems to or told all my things to. Like, he's an incredibly insightful man, full of wisdom, years of experience, believes in a lot of the things that we believe in. So we also connected over our beliefs of, the world, the universe, everything. So it almost felt like speaking to a friend many times, and the things that he would tell me was always like the things that I needed to hear and the things that have helped me evolve and move on. So when Alex stopped seeing him, I was like, why would you stop seeing him? I was like, we both need to see him. But I was like, you know what? It's his choice, whatever. But talking about what he's talking about right now, I honestly don't remember. So not this time.
We, long story short, she's told me that she recommends me like seeing him again. And so I decided to start seeing him again. But I wanted to bring that up because now that you don't remember this is funny. We'll talk about this offline a little bit, but it was a challenging point for us. Like, we went through like a 10 to 15 day period where we were not in a good spot, and she had brought it to me. I then had to like sit with it and like analyze and do a lot of reflection on where we were at, and once again, did we make the right decision traveling? I personally started to create stories like I'm across the world. Like these challenges, I was a little worried when we.
I mean, it was a big adjustment period for us all, and I'll touch on this slightly because it happened in France. Having my sister there now cooking for us we realized how low her tolerance was of children, of noise, of their chaos, of them just being kids. Where obviously there are kids, our tolerance is very high. We live with them every day. That's how we spend all our time. And I think that was one of the frictions. Also, was adding that other energy into our home, into our space, into what we know as home. Was just so one of the big things was the kitchen was the living room. You had to walk through the kitchen to get to the living room. And in the kitchen, there's just not a lot of space around the counter and the stove and where the dining room table was for the kids. And of course, what are the kids doing? They're running to the living room and to their rooms all day long. And there was a couple of moments where she got very frustrated, very agitated, asked them to stop running through the kitchen, and even was like locking the kitchen doors because she didn't want them in there. And I remember like us having to discuss that, like, hey, like this isn't how we raise our kids, and this isn't what, like the way we do things at home. And I understand that we have given her a job and that, she's just trying to complete her task. But I also want my children to feel free and their home, which, whatever Airbnb we're in, that's our home. So I was like, I don't want the kids like to feel like they cannot walk through the kitchen or they cannot be in the living room because she doesn't want anybody crossing through the kitchen. So like that was like another added thing to our relationship that we had to figure out, like, how are we going to have this conversation with her being my sister. It's not just like an employee that you just pull aside and you're like, hey, like blah, blah, blah. Like
and ensuring the delivery was on point.
Yes. Like there had to be a certain way that we had to approach this to deliver it. So it wasn't in a way that, landed wrong. And also, where is she going to go? I was like, we had just started traveling. I was like, where's she going to go? She can't go back home.
We weren't reprimanding her. We were more like, hey, this was our expectation. Like we wanted to. Well,
we wanted to be like, this is our life. And we want you to know, like, we're not asking you to be like us and change who you are. But we also want you to know, like, this is the way we're raising our kids. And these are the values and the things that are important to us and how our children feel in their environment, which is to be free, to be open, to be themselves. Like, I don't want my children walking around their own home like they're on eggshells and that they have to be careful with, where they go and what they say and how loud they're being. So that was like another, I remember that was really early on into France.
And we also like put ourselves in her shoes and had some understanding in the sense of like, well, she's never had this many kids before.
Yeah.
Being around.
She's trying to make us food.
And she's never bulk cooked like that. Like, she was a chef. Things are different. Like, she never.
We needed a lot more food that she was accustomed to making.
So like bulk cooking is different than like individually, like family cooking. So there was a lot of things that she was navigating first time that were most likely affecting her and how she showed up.
And then also like our kids, we have never set rules on the fridge and what ingredients are available and what you can and cannot touch. And for her, she literally was shopping in recipes. So if the child ate something outside of the recipe, it became an issue. So then that was like a learning curve for all of us, of me like, hey, I don't put limits on how many berries my kids eat, how many apples they eat. So if you need something for a recipe, you need to triple, not even double it. You need to triple it because chances are they're going to go through the first batch and they might even go through the second batch. So just go ahead and triple it. I was like, do not worry about the cost of the budget. I was like, we don't have a food budget. I'm like, just go for it. We will adjust somewhere else in our life. And that's pretty much how we have lived for a long time, is we don't put a monetary budget on our food. Like, yes, like in a sense, we're not like shopping for whatever, but for us, when it comes to food, it's about buying the best and the healthiest in wherever we are, and then everybody having their tummies fed.
Yeah, because food is medicine.
Yeah, and we're like, we'll adjust our budget somewhere else, but not in food. Like, we don't go like for the cheapest things when it comes to food. So I was like, don't worry about the cost. Just buy what you need to buy and buy triple what those things that you notice, because I was like, I don't put limitations on my kids of like, no, you can't eat that. Like, I was like, unless you're going to make it in the next hour or the next meal, I don't put limitations on that. And that's just the way I have also adjusted. Like, they've done it to me where I buy something for a recipe and they eat it. And I'm just like, oh, well, I got to buy it again. Or I make another recipe. But she was buying so specific and so like in time that she wouldn't have time to like run back to the supermarket and get it and things like that. So I was just like, look, if they do it, Alex or I will go buy it, or we don't care. Just make what you can without having that ingredient. Obviously, like if you can. But that became like a big learning lesson for us all in a conversation that we had to have. And then it was a little bit better because she adjusted the way she shopped, and we adjusted what we shopped, and we would buy the extra stuff that we knew. But then the thing was also walking to the supermarket, having to bring it back. Like that became a whole thing because it was like, well, now I need to walk 10 minutes and shop and walk it back. And so it was, like I said, an adjustment period for all of what is it really like to cook for 8 people? Well, 7, because Liam wasn't really eating food. For 7 people, how much do 4 kids eat? We're constantly running around and enjoying life. Like our kids eat a lot of food and they're very, healthy kids. Like we've never put a limit on what they eat, and we don't do snacks. So like snacks for us is through cucumbers, carrots, fruits, things like that. Like I don't buy crackers and I don't know, whatever people usually snack on. Our kids very much eat their meals. So whenever they go on snack on things in the fridge, it's usually ingredients that most people would also put in meals. And then the other part of that was they were used to my style of cooking where I bulk cook. So there's always food ready to be reheated in the fridge. And now it was very much like after the meal was done, there was no leftovers. So then that was like the other thing that I was like, hey, the kids are used to always having something to go back to. So I was like, whatever you're cooking, you have to double, maybe triple it. So if they get hungry in another hour or 2, it's not about making a whole nother meal. It's like, oh, this was here from earlier. Here, let me throw it in a pan. There you go. And having meals available, because the other big thing that was happening was the meals weren't getting started till the kids were hungry. And then there's that stage of them, being in moods because they're hungry. And now they're all in the kitchen.
And they're eating what she's like. It's not just like a meal. It's more of like, hey, you're eating this portion of the meal.
Yes. So
and
her chef mind couldn't get over the meal has to be absolutely presentable and on the table and served before anybody sits down and touches it. Yeah. And I was like, look, honey, that's not the way it works in this family.
No. So it was for us. It was.
I was like, I sometimes will cook one ingredient and they have eaten it all, and then I cook the next ingredient and they eat it all, and I'm just like, it doesn't matter to me. I'm like, look, as long as they're happy and they're fed, I don't care if they're eating it one ingredient at a time. I just, for me, that's been my normal, and I just didn't think outside of that. So yeah, I had to put myself in her shoes, and I was like, oh, that's what's happening. In a kitchen, you do not put out your product till it's done, till it's finalized. Like no one touches it till everything is complete and it's presentable. So I had to have that conversation. Like, look, this is not a restaurant. This is not about presentation. My kids do not care. Like, is it nice? Of course. It is so nice to see all these curated meals on a table. And it feels good. It does feel good. But I was like, right now, the stage they're in, they don't care what it looks like.
And they never learned that lesson either. Like in all of the time that she cooked for us, it was nothing ever changed on that. And I hope that she knew that there wasn't, like for us, there wasn't like a pressure for us to teach, like to.
No, and I told you, I was like, we truly do appreciate that you're putting this much love and effort into everything you're doing. But right now, it's just about feeding them. We're like, we don't care.
Like when we hired the women in Dominican Republic, they even cooked the same way that we ate. So like they would cook it, and if obviously the kids would come and eat it, they would just hand put it out, and there wasn't like.
And and we told them that we're like, look, they're gonna come in here and they're just gonna start eating food. Like just put it out. It doesn't matter. Like it's not about presentation. They're like, oh, you sure? You sure? I was like, I am positive. Put it out one ingredient at the time. Like they will eat what they want, and what they won't, they don't. And if they want to wait, like there are times where my son will specifically say, no, I don't want to eat that because I'm waiting for this. Yeah. And they'll wait. But I'm like, if they can't, they can't, and I don't care. I'm like, they're eating. So all of that to say, London and France was all about recalibration for us as far as like the expectations we had set, the expectations that we thought, and then actually living it. And then all having these conversations and all having these adjustments before we moved on to the next month of travel or the next places.
The vision. We also had to buy another, at that point, we had to buy another suitcase.
We did buy another suitcase in France. We realized that we had too many like extra bags and things in our hands. It was also, we did put the boys' helmets a few times in the suitcase, but then over time that also became something that we had to undo because we had bought a bunch of clothes that we needed for the colder weather. So we had to adjust many things. But that is where we bought another suitcase in France, because I was like, it doesn't make sense to carry all these bags in our hands when we can just have another luggage and check it in. So originally we were only traveling with one large suitcase, Alex's large travel backpack. The boys each had a backpack. I had my computer purse. I had my own purse, which when you travel overseas, you don't get the whole computer purse, personal bag. That does not exist. You get one personal bag. So I also had to condense what I was carrying, and eventually we'll talk about that later, like getting rid of these things and whatnot. So that was all like, let's get realistic, what's working, what's not, let's drop it. And then we did a little more of that the next month and the next month, and then again a few months later we had to do it again. But it was it was cemented in reality now of what's working and what wasn't, and that was, I think, the whole takeaway of that first.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a month. It was like a half a month of travel.
We never saw any challenge in a light of like burdensome. It was more of what's the lessons to be learned.
Yeah.
And
what's working and what's not working.
How can we evolve?
Yeah.
And we were always okay with shifting.
I think that the biggest thing, is that you need to anchor yourself in why you're doing it, so that you can keep moving forward with that why. And like for us, it was truly about the lived experience and like seeing the kids, everything they were being exposed to, everything that they were learning. For us, that was like, yeah, that was our why. We were like, we want to keep doing this. Like, this feels amazing. So we need to figure out how to keep doing this without letting these hiccups be the end of the line. Like, at any point, we could have just said, okay, this isn't working. Let's turn back. Let's buy flights.
Yeah.
Let's rent a place 1 year and not do this. But we were like, no, like, we're going to keep.
Or even with Catherine, like, oh, you know what? We can just easily, like, we're done.
Yeah.
But we know that when we are faced with a challenge, leaning even more into it, it helps us grow
and learn. And with all of that, is like, even though she was my own sister, I hadn't lived with her since before, I think when I was like a sophomore in high school. I was like 14 or 15, because by the time she was like 17, she basically wasn't home. We weren't even hanging out throughout my high school years, because she kind of went off the wayside and had her own life, and I was on a different path, and we were already, like, in a sense, our paths just became different, and I wasn't really hanging out with her. My vision was somewhere else, and she went and had her own life, and then we've reconnected over the years, but I hadn't really lived with her since I was like a teen. Yeah. So for me, that was a whole new experience to have my sister now living with me, living with my family, and we are nothing alike, which is why I think we get along so well, because we balance each other in many ways. Like, we are nothing alike, and that was like a shock to my husband, because we actually look a lot alike physically. So people are like, oh, like, you look so similar. Like, there's been many times where I post pictures of her and people assume it's me with the kids, and I'm like, no, that was my sister. So we're very similar looking, but we are nothing alike. And that was, for my husband, he was like, oh my gosh. He's like, I knew she was different. I didn't realize how much more different she was than you. And that was like, it was funny. I was like, yeah, she's nothing like you.
Well, one of the big things is, like, she's early, just like I was going through, and parts of me are still going through. There was this transformation process. She just quit her job. Like, she did this big leap of faith. So there is unraveling that she is going through during this time. Yeah. And so having some understanding.
We were like holding this all. Like, it felt like we were holding all this space for ourselves, for her, for the kids, like for it was emotionally a very deep.
And then she had never traveled before, so a lot of this is brand new, and
culture shock,
and kind of looking at us to lead the way, to guide the way, which no issues. But so for me, it was like, oh man, the reality, but my expectation versus reality was totally different. which I think is the underlying theme of this whole podcast.
Yes.
All right.
We're going to cut it short.
We will talk to you next time.
Next time in 2 minutes.
2 minutes.